is going on, guys? Happy Wednesday. Today we have the one and only Adam Sutherland from Frag Garage and Beyond the Reef podcast. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, dude. Pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what we're talking about today, but I'm sure we'll find some rabbit holes to go down.
Always. Reef keeping pro tips and tricks. I thought about this the other day when I was actually listening to your podcast and you had a guest on. And I always find it interesting hearing things. I think you had Dong or one of them on. And,
Yeah.
they're talking about different methods and, in from podcast to podcast, like you have one guest that's all for something and the next one you have something that's completely opposite. And yeah, like between the two of us, we talk to, a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of good pro tips that, we've probably taken ourselves or, makes you second guess stuff. So I figured that'd be a fun rabbit hole to dig into today.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how many times you come across contradictory opinions, and for people like us, like sometimes the amount of conversations you have kind of just make you kind of scratch your head. I mean, what I'm trying to find is some conclusiveness to all of these things, but then you end up second guessing certain things too. So it's like it's tricky. I mean, it's tricky to extract what really works, And I think if I really went through all the videos I've done, I could probably make a list of the things that I think have the strongest, impact overall. But yeah, I don't know. What do you want to get into? Where's a
Okay, so a couple interesting ones recently. Like I find it so interesting. Like sometimes like guests will be like hardcore about trace elements. Other ones like no, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't matter. Salt doesn't matter. More how you in tune with your tank. Some are completely pro water changes. Some are not.
yeah.
Yeah, it's. Have you from I'm gonna say the past 6 months or year or so been doing the podcast? Have you changed any of the ways that you do things?
Yeah, I mean, I always, if I'm really going to try something, I'll give it a solid try for a while, and I'll sort of really see how that interaction plays out. I mean, one thing I tried was maybe over the last 2 years, 3 or 4 different salt brands, and for a good chunk of time each, like 6 months at a time.
Yep.
And I didn't see any major impact or changes on the health of my tank or on my ICPs, which is kind of telling me that what we think as far as the trace element composition in our salt water, like people say, oh, most of, you're replacing that salt water, you're getting perfect salt water every time you do a water change. That's not true. Like, I think that's something that I've kind of, come to a conclusion on. I mean, most salt mixes have a good composition of all of those things, but, a lot of those minor and trace elements are coming in from other inputs.
Yep.
From your feeding to, it can be unintentional, intentional. I'm just doing this series with Dong Zhao right now on all your reef tank inputs and outputs. And we had to do 2 parts because it was just so much. And I still even just think about other things that I was like, shit, we forgot to talk about that. So there may be maybe a little bonus episode. People seem to be big fans of Dong. So
it was interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, I learned from that what the actual, brown crud on the side of your saltwater bin is too.
Yeah. But then somebody messaged me after that and told me that it's precipitation of trace elements. So you you pick and choose. Like I mean, obviously Dong's got the chemistry credentials to sort of support a lot of the things he says. So I mean, yeah, I mean, pick someone that you respect and that has good success in their systems, and follow what they say. You don't have to you don't have to mix and match either, but I think Dong's a good guy to follow.
Yeah, for sure. Like he definitely has nice systems. Now, one thing that I actually did question that you guys were talking about, or he mentioned about like mixing salts, and he wasn't a fan of it because of the different chemistry and way it dissolves. Or personally, I never saw a difference. I'll just mix whatever together. I was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Salt is salt in my mind. But
yeah, I do think it is something to be a little bit aware of. I mean, if you're just adding like a few cups to a big batch of a salt because you need to use that bucket of whatever up.
Yeah.
But like there are every salt brand there's a whole bunch of chemistry that happens when that salt is mixing, and there's certain, I'm assuming certain things that buffer all of those reactions to occur in the way that the salt is supposed to. And if you mix another brand in, there might be some other decaking agent or something that has some interaction that, could lead to some precipitation or who knows what else. But I mean, it is like, you're literally like putting all of these things together and wanting for this chemistry to all present in a certain way. So
Yep.
I would say maybe don't, but at the same time, like if it's like I say, if you're just using up a bucket, maybe just use like a, if you're doing, let's say you're making 35 gallons, let's say it's a brood or something, and maybe, I don't know, 10% of that is a bucket of IO you're trying to use up. It's probably okay.
Well, which is funny, is back in the day when I wanted to like get more of a appropriate alkalinity, I'd be mixing, either like the Red Sea, the blue and the black, or I'd be mixing ion reef crystals. I'm like, 50-50, this should give me roughly the elk I want. And
well, I think the blue and the black is fine, because I'm going to assume that the actual,
same company
formula of blue and black bucket Red Sea is probably the same. It's just the elemental compositions are different. So I would say that one is safe to mix and match. I have done it quite a bit, and it's worked for me. So no qualms with that. That's fine.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And then the other one in my mind too, when people are always like, oh, how do I change salt brands? I'm like, I just do it. Like, you don't really worry about it. Like, if you're going to do like a massive water change and do a massive, parameter swing, okay, that's one thing. But if you're just doing a small water change, like in my mind, it makes zero difference.
I would say the first time you switch salts, don't do anything more than 10, just to be on the safe side. Yeah. I would say 10%, and go from there. But yeah, it's like it's like switching a dog's dog food or something like that. You if you want to do it right, you kind of you adjust them. You kind of start to introduce it and get the system used to it. It may not matter. Like I have done some larger water changes with the new salt brand, and it seemed to be fine. But I mean, it's just really hard to I don't know, to figure out all of these interactions that are happening in our systems, and it's all just an amalgamation of all of these choices and decisions we made, all the inputs that we do. And you can never really say that it's one or two things you need to change, or like there's just so many interactions happening. So just look at all your inputs and outputs. Try to think about your tank for like, what is everything that I'm putting into this.
Yep. No, it's true. Another one you're digging into that was kind of made me debate it is like you're talking about the or NO3 dosing versus dosing ammonia directly. Are you still doing that? Because I know you're usually more low in your systems. I know you were dosing it for a while.
Well, I tried ammonia dosing for a while, and it seemed fine. Like it didn't. I didn't really notice a big difference from nitrate dosing. Actually, it's kind of funny. I'll name Mike Paletta, because Mike Paletta was kind of the one that he's pushing ammonia pretty hard. But Mike Paletta really, really likes to support. Like when he's like, this thing's working, he really likes to get behind it. Yeah, it's like absolutely faster growth, blah blah blah. And it's like there's always that chance that your tank was just on the upswing, anyways. And I'm not saying this about Mike. I'm saying this about anybody that sees an improvement. Is like, well, maybe the tank was just on its way in a positive direction, regardless of that change. And, you just happen to go, oh, that must've been it,
Yeah, that's fair. With trace elements, are you still fairly tweaking all your trace?
Yeah, I have been. There's some that actually, it's kind of a little bit nice that I notice now that the Fauna Marine, the ranges that they suggest, some of them, they'll say that 0 is okay. And I think that's based on the fact that like, nothing is ever really 0. And if you are doing a system like Bowling Light or ESV, all of those trace elements are getting added every day anyways. It's just that they're getting used. So it's like, they can be 0. Some of those things like, I don't know, chromium, you could get a 0 reading on an ICP, and don't be too concerned about it, because chances are, especially ICP OES, it's not, it may be outside of the detection range, but it's still there. So, but yeah, I mean, the Oshimo ICP is obviously really good for those trace metals, those, really, really fine-tuned metals. And I think we're going to see more MS on the market, probably being used in correlation with OES, because OES is actually better for your major trace elements in general, at least more accurate. And then those minor trace are more accurate on the MS. So,
having a nice blended one of everything is kind of nice too, right? If you don't have to pick one or the other, right? Just give me the best of both worlds with one test. And
if you got, the lab is set up to do it efficiently, I don't mind paying even just a little add-on fee or whatever, if that's what it takes. And but I mean, my whole thing with trace elements, I do think that, over the last couple of years, paying more attention to them, doing ICPs regularly, it's probably led to my systems being better. I think in the past, maybe when I had a stride with the tank, I talk about a reef tank stride a lot. It's like, sometimes we just hit that period where things are kind of rocking.
Yep.
I think that was more luck, and now it's a little bit more hard work that is giving me that payoff versus in the past, it was more luck. It was more just, at that given time, everything just kind of lined up. That water change I did, that, this and that. But now, there's a little bit more, credibility behind it. So, we kind of know. And there's a lot of people that switch to moonshiners and will say that their tank had a massive improvement. So,
when I was doing the dailies, my tank looked pretty damn good. And then I quit doing them, and it wasn't like, it still was good, but it wasn't like as, pristine and vibrant. So there was definitely something to that. Again, you're paying more attention to the tank or giving more love. I was doing more ICPs and corrections, where now it was like a year between my last 2 ICP tests, which is terrible, but it is what it is. I finally just sent one
Bad.
off. Yeah. And some stuff was out of whack. So, I did some corrective doses on it. But, and then it made me do a bunch more water changes just to like reset stuff a bit. So this year I've been trying to be better at doing, semi-regular water changes just for like good measure. But that's one change so far this year, for me at least.
Something I forgot to mention about ammonia in this talk I had with Dong Zhao was he said that actually cyanobacteria utilizes ammonia better than corals, better than nitrate.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, if you're adding, if you want to go to ammonia dosing, you've got problems with cyano, it's probably just going to grow the cyano before it gets to the coral anyways. And he kind of thinks that maybe that ammonia doesn't even really get a chance to get to the coral a lot of the time. Anyways, it just gets nitrified and, that is. Yeah,
I think one of his points too was more that in a sense, a lot of the bacteria eats it and then the corals eat the bacteria in a sense. And that's kind of in line with a lot of carbon dosing and how it indirectly kind of feeds the corals.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would agree.
Have you, I guess if you're dosing stuff to raise nutrients, you're probably not doing carbon dosing, but have you dabbled with carbon dosing in the thought process of that it helps feed your corals, like the bacteria?
That's actually something I'm thinking about trying. And, obviously the fear is it going to lower your nutrients too quickly, or your measurable nutrients, there could be a different correlation with, well, no, you don't have less nutrients. You just have more bacteria. That's actually food for your corals, which is all that actually really matters. But I might give it a try. Cause I know that Abe from Coral Euphoria made a video maybe about 6 months or a year ago saying that he kind of overcame a plateau by switching to carbon dosing.
Yeah.
So, because again, like with nutrients, it's like it's all just the leftover. It doesn't tell you that that's all usable, nutrition for corals. It just says, there's some leftover. You're getting a reading on it, so it's not zero. So cool.
Yeah.
But I think it's it's important to consider that corals aren't feeding in a way that is, I guess, it's not like us, they don't just, well, I'm talking more SPS. I mean, LPS corals, like obviously they have a better mechanism for taking in food, things like anemones, like it's a much more direct, visual thing where you can actually see them take in food into the polyp. But I think with SPS, I think a lot of the food being absorbed is like you say, is bacteria, being absorbed. Yeah, because it has to be broken down. They don't have like a stomach, like in a digestive system like we do. Like we have, we're a much more complex organism.
That tiny stringy polyp isn't grabbing much. So
no, and it doesn't have. Yeah, it's not a complex digestive system. So it needs that food or bacteria or whatever to, I think, be pre-digested in a way that makes it, easy for it to integrate.
That makes a lot more sense too, and. In my mind, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking back on my early days of reefing where I'm shooting powdered food at all my acros, and looking back now, it probably did absolutely nothing, right? It's like the LPS, the bigger mouth corals that are the ones that are actually eating it, not the acros.
Yeah, totally. It's just like waving a bunch of pizzas in front of us, but we can't eat them,
Yeah. Do you like
it's like
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It smells delicious.
You gotta break those pizzas down first.
Yeah, get the leftovers later.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so on that note, do you do anything to purposely feed your acros at all?
I do. I have been doing the which fauna marine food is it? It's the coral food one. That's it's like a wet food that you keep in the fridge.
The orange one that smells funky.
It's got like a bunch of calanus and stuff, and I think if an SPS polyp has any chance at catching something, it's probably something that size, if they are actually taking in, plankton food like that. But yeah, I mean, if the corals aren't getting it directly, like the fish definitely love it. I see all the little damsels and wrasses and stuff going crazy for it. So I don't think it hurts. I think it's still, worth putting a little bit here and there. And you also see a feed response from like the millies get really hairy when I feed it. So, that I think that's telling me that,
something good.
Yeah. Nothing. It's not doing something bad. Yeah. It's probably doing something good. Yeah.
That's fair. With your fish, do you feed frozen or a flake or a pellet, or what do you feed your fish normally?
I pretty much feed, other than just a bit of nori here and there, I pretty much feed only frozen.
Okay.
And actually, the food that I feed is it's collected actually not far from where we live. It's collected in the Georgia Strait. In the peak of the summer, it's like plankton.
Yep.
And it's like they're a little bigger than a mysis shrimp, and they collect them and they freeze them in these big, massive blocks. So I bought like I think a 18-pound block or something. So I've been chipping away at it with the chisel for the last the last couple of years. It'll last me a while, but I mean, it's just like I can't think of a better food for your fish because like it's literally whale food. That's what whales eat.
What brand is the stuff that you use?
It's actually it used to be a company called Sea Care that Tim Tessier that he used to process it into smaller packs and he used to sell it, and he doesn't anymore, but he still has the connections, so I just hit him up every once in a while
for a fresh brick.
But I can't get a small amount. It's like I said, I had to buy like, I don't know, it was like 20 pounds or maybe more.
It's like a single zoo order or nothing.
Yeah, but if anybody in Canada is interested in it, send me a message and I can probably hook you up with
I'll message you later
for some bulk pricing. I mean, you know how it is when you have a lot of fish and multiple systems, like the food starts to get expensive. And something I'll say about some of those frozen foods is they're actually, once you thaw them out, you realize how much water they are.
Tons.
And it's like, oh, that's all I get. And this stuff is like, it's condensed. Like, you rinse it and it's almost the same size as it was before you thawed it out. So
first questions. You rinse your frozen food.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't, which I constantly struggle with high nutrients. That's probably part of my problem. So if you're dosing nitrates and phosphates, then maybe don't rinse. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think the concern with that is there could be some, depending on the process in which the food is, processed and packaged and whatever. I don't think that water is particularly favorable for our tanks, so it might be better to rinse it. But yeah, actually, one of the best tips I got out of the episode with Dong, I don't know if you remember this part, was doing like a skimmer water change. So you crank your skimmer up and you use the skimmer outlet on the cup to do your water change out of the skimmer cup. So you're basically, skimming extremely wet, but I think that it's going to get a lot of those, DOC kind of compounds and stuff out. Anything that your skimmer would skim out, it's kind of just like blasting it out. So, it could be something to try. I wonder what kind of impact it would have on a higher nutrient system, but I think in general, it's probably going to help with water clarity.
When I'm back after my trip, I will try this and I'll let you know.
Yeah. It's also a trick for if you run a chemiclean treatment. It's a really good way to get all the chemiclean out of your tank. So
that's the only time I've actually done it. And it works extremely well for that. It's like the express route of dealing with the skimmer overflows.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try it just out of curiosity for like a nutrient sake. I don't know how I'm gonna like pump it into my brute container from down low, but I'll find a way.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I'd just be curious if you use like a white bucket, just let me know how dark the water is.
That's how wet or dry it is, but yeah, totally.
Yeah, but clean your skimmer cup first so that you know that it's not just gunk that was already in the skimmer cup. And then tell me how dark it is, because I definitely noticed like it was a darker color. I just did a little water change that way too. So I mean, it doesn't have to be your entire water change. It could just be, you could do 5 gallons that way.
I'll try it.
And then
curiosity's peaked.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see if it does have a big nutrient impact, because I struggle with high nutrients. Like my nutrients are always high. I recently started carbon dosing again and knock it down, and it's been a good year since I've done it, but I actually threw a little bit of GFO in my reactor, just like knocked down my PO4 after. I was like, ooh, it's getting up there. So
GFO.
Not well, Rollfoss, yeah. And I
Okay.
haven't used it in at least a year or two because I'm like, okay, it's stealing my trace elements, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And then after doing an ICP and seeing my levels were super high, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll knock it down a bit.
Yeah.
That 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 was the biggest problem with getting the Trident NPs. It just made me feel bad about my crazy high nutrients. But then again, like most curls are fine. Like, does it really matter? I don't know.
Yeah. Have you found the Trident NP to be like reliable enough? Like since they've probably done some firmware updates and stuff.
Yeah, so I was early beta tester, and at
Yeah.
first I think like the PO4 was spot on, the NO3 was off, and then eventually after a couple updates, then it fixed it and was pretty
Yeah.
much good for me. But
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so the other funny thing, which terrible for me, but my Trident was having an issue, like the calcium kept failing on me, and I was like, okay, I just kind of ignored it for a while, and eventually I got around to fixing it, and it was like a sticky solenoid, so I fixed it. And then once I fixed it, it's like, oh, your calcium's low. And I was like, it probably just needs to be calibrated after fixing it. I said an ICP, and I was like, oh, nope, it really was way low.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
How
bumped
low did it go?
340 or something like that.
Yeah, that's getting a little. That's
Yep.
getting a little sketch.
So I had my red dragon star in S10, and then I fragged a bunch off and got rid of the skeleton. It was on my to-do list anyways, but I was like, that's probably what caused it. So
Yeah. It's funny. Tridents can be annoying sometimes. I got one of my units is testing, even after it's calibrated, it's still testing my ALK around 12, and it's like 7.5. And I know it's 7.5. I'll go and test it again. I mean, you could be like, oh, it could be your Salifert kit. I don't think it's the Salifert kit,
yeah.
But every once in a while, you got to just take those things apart and, do a clean of all the inside tubing and stuff like that. Luckily, I have an employee for that now, so
that's nice.
It's been nice. Yeah, he's a mechanical engineer, so I just put gear like that in front of him, and it's like no problem for him. So
You're a lucky guy. I need one.
Okay. Yeah, you just got to get yourself a mechanical engineer. No big deal.
Perfect. Support my home tank that I just use for videos and fun.
Hey, why not?
I know
You can pay him in coral. Maybe.
That's a
Find the
fair
right
point.
person.
That's true. Okay, shout out to Charles in the chat. Devin, I watched your DIY video for a battery backup for MP40s with the Power Queen 12.8 volt. Helped me out big time because my area got hit by a hurricane and without power for 8 days. Dang,
Ouch.
that sucks, but that is like, I'm very happy to hear that that helped save your tank.
You might have saved a tank.
That is awesome. I love that.
That's the goal, right?
Yep. So you're talking about the battery backup for the L2 pump. I think I actually did one. The only difference is just pick up a battery booster. You need to boost it from 12 volts to 24 volts. So you can either buy a random one and do it, or you could just buy the Ecotech one that's pretty cheap and just chop the end off and just put on some terminals to hook on your battery. So I have done videos on it, but yeah, it's pretty easy to do
Nice. Yeah, I need to get a bit of a better battery backup plan. I've got a generator and I've got a few of the main important pumps on backups, but it's you just never know. I mean, our part of the world generally pretty good for power outages don't tend to last that long. It depends on how in the boonies you are, but you guys had the fires a couple of years ago, and that was pretty scary.
That's what made me actually buy a generator, because I was fine, but I had buddies on the other side of the lake that were without power for like a week. So I bought a generator after that. I was like, nope, if that ever happens, I'd be buggered with all my tanks. So I've never used it, but I bought one when it's on sale. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna say 90% of the time the power outages are within a couple hours. So the battery backup on the battery heads is all I need for anything common.
Something I'll actually also say about power outages is sometimes it's good to shut off everything on your tank and make sure that it all comes back on properly, or also that say you have check valves on your overflows, that your sump doesn't overflow or something like that.
Yeah.
It's good to be prepared for the power outage part of it rather than just the missing power, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there's other things that can happen, and there's things like if your skimmer doesn't have a delay timer on it or something like that, your skimmer is probably gonna overflow immediately. Like there's a lot of other little kind of things to keep in mind if the power goes out. So you kind of need to have a power up plan that's not just keeping your pumps running.
When's the last time you cleaned your return pump?
Well, since I have my mechanical engineer working for me, it actually happens pretty often.
Yeah.
I would say, every 2 or 3 months kind of thing.
That's pretty good.
They all get cleaned. Yeah.
I did mine a week or two ago for the first time in probably a year. So I was like,
yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, some people, they would not even be able to say when the last time
Well,
was. So
I posted a clip on Instagram and I was laughing. Some people are like, I'm scared to turn mine off in case it doesn't come back on. It's like, that's why you clean it. But yeah.
But you don't want to be saying that anyways, because, if your power goes out and it comes back on quickly and the pump doesn't come on, I don't like that. I mean, I'm a big fan of redundant return pumps. I don't think I would run a system ever without dual returns running. That's sketchy for sure.
Had it on my last tank. The current one does not, but I still have a spare just so I could swap it if I ever need to.
Yeah, I mean, you're home enough that it's probably not a concern. But if you're someone that travels quite a bit, then it's definitely a thing. Especially because if it's a colder time of year and the heater's in the sump and it's not getting that heater circulation, then maybe the main pumps are working, but it's not getting the turnover. So
fair point.
Tank could get down. I mean, room temperature is generally fine. But
as long as your house still has heat, you can crank it up a bit and you'll probably be okay. If your house doesn't have heat, then that's another issue.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a little bit about what corals can tolerate from, for the most part, I have winter shipping dialed. Winter shipping in Canada, which I'll tell you is like no easy feat. But every once in a while there's a delay and something arrives, and it seems like things. Okay, for one, I think it depends on how long they have been. Let's say between 65 and 70 Fahrenheit. Let's say, I think things will start to die around 65 or lower, but it depends on how long they're at that temperature for. Like, I think corals can tolerate probably going down around there. So but 18, maybe only.
Okay, sorry, I had to convert it for my own knowledge.
Yeah,
I was like,
I do Fahrenheit. I don't know. It's just to me, it's I suppose a slightly more detailed, but then you can just do Celsius and 0.5 or whatever. But I think corals are totally fine at room temperature for probably a couple days. I think it's more when you get down in that 65, low 60s range. That's when you're going to start seeing corals die.
It sucked. I bought a couple of Ghanies. And when I got them, the water was super duper cold from just being on a FedEx truck all day. And they all bit the dust. I was like, because I just bought, 3 or 4 new nice ones. And I was just like, but yeah,
I mean, there's
shipping. It's like
there's so much to it, though. I mean, the shipper really. I mean, it's one thing to grow corals and sell fish, but the real pros have they cover all the bases, and it's like there's a lot to it. You got to activate the heat pack properly. You need to use the right amount of heat packs. You need to make sure there's enough room for the heat packs to stay activated. There's a lot of factors. I mean, some people just stuff everything in a box and put a heat pack in there, and there's no room for the heat pack, and it just doesn't stay live.
Yeah, so. It doesn't work. It just burns out quickly.
Yeah,
or doesn't have the oxygen to interact. So you're like, yep.
Yeah. I see a question in the chat from Richard Colombo. How do you plumb dual returns to one system? I think it depends on the tank. Like, my tanks have been built to have dual returns. But if you have like a Red Sea all-in-one that just is built for one return, your only real option is to, split off and come out the back, with a separate feed. I don't think there's any other way you can do it. Can you think of that with the Red Seas? Like, they don't have like a capped off extra pipe, do they?
No, they don't. I mean, you could wire and put it together, but your pumps are kind of fighting each other. Honestly, as long as you're around, I would just have a backup return pump, like the same model, so you can just swap it out if you needed to. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I mean, a good thing with vacations is if you put those like some webcams on, so you can see that the flow is all running, and have a spare, return pump ready, sitting right in front of the tank for whoever can drop by and hopefully swap it for you. Make sure it's all fitted properly with the right size fittings. And
I'm going on vacation in a few days, so finger crossed the tank's still here when I come back.
Oh yeah, how long? Where are you going?
10 days.
Oh, that's a good solid amount.
Yep. I'm doing a Disney cruise. We're gonna go to Hawaii and then sail back to Vancouver.
Nice.
Yeah,
Disney
should
cruise.
be fun.
All right.
I know. So that should be fun. Yeah. So there might not be a live stream next week. If I have a chance to pre-record something before then I shall. And if not, then I'm sorry. And I'll see you in a week after that.
Yeah. But I'll have a new Dong episode out, so they can
fill it in.
Check that out. There you go.
Release it Wednesday night at live stream time.
Yeah. Maybe.
Hey, it's a good opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. You got a bigger audience than me, so
potential here. Potential, fill the void.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, so that should be fun. I haven't really done any trips since like pre-pandemic madness, so yeah, it'll be fun. Little
Yeah.
family getaway.
Cool. Yeah, your kid's about the right age for that,
Yep.
so it'll be
We got a sweet deal, so time was right.
nice.
Yep.
Nice.
So yeah, so vacation planning, that's actually half the thing that prompted me to be like, okay, I'm going to clean my return pump that's been clean like a year and like give it a week or so, everything's good. Clean your skimmer. I gave that a deep clean and citric acid. So the two main like some things. And then, did a big water change last weekend. So hopefully everything's good.
Yeah, and I think you're right to, if you're going to clean the return pump, don't do it the day before the trip. Do it a week before the trip and then make sure it's all good. Because, yeah, some things are working until you mess with them. And then they're actually maybe not as good off, depending.
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Check your float valves. I mean, that's also true.
Yeah.
Yep. I had, I even bought I don't know why, I bought a backup return pump. Not a return pump, ATO, but I haven't even used it yet. So it's just sitting in the box. Because my other one was being flaky, but then I fixed it. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll leave this here for now. Adam should do a live stream so you can ask questions. He's on one right now.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, questions. What do you got?
And actually something I put the idea around of was doing like some ICP consultations, but doing it as sort of a live stream. So, we can look at someone's ICP and then talk about it, and it could be a good resource for kind of people getting a bit more insight on their ICPs.
I'll send one away. Can I come on? I'll be your guest.
Yeah.
And you can critique me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We'll tear it apart.
My last one was crap, so I've done a couple water changes since then, and then I didn't have all the elements, but the ones I had kicking around, I fixed.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Sounds good.
Does this mean I have to buy a fauna one and send it off?
Yeah, you might have to. I'll send you one. It's all good.
Deal. We'll do it. This could be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I'll be all shamed. She'll be like, why is this out of whack? I'll be like,
yeah. I mean, some of the ICP thing that sometimes gets me scratching my head a bit is I'll look at a time where the tank was doing really, really well, and then I'll look at the ICP and I'll be like, oh, these things that I thought mattered a lot were actually kind of low in this test.
Yeah.
So, what does that tell me? I mean, not to say it all helps, but, maybe in that particular situation, it was more of a ratio thing of some of those, balances, and could be to do with nutrient availability. It's, many factors, but who knows?
It's interesting. The one thing I always struggle with my head still, though, I'm like, I can spend like $50 on an ICP test, or I can spend $50 on a bucket of salt and just do a big water change. And I'm like, which one has more value? Like, if you are very hardcore dosing all the traces, you absolutely need to make sure you're like in line. But for the random spot checks, I'm like, is it better to just do a big water change, or do I want to do an ICP? I go back and forth over the years on this one.
I mean, I think that in general, it depends on every tank, right? Because the nutrients are going to be different. But I think in general, I would do more smaller water changes and, focus more on ICPs and trace element dosing. If you're going for, super optimized SPS color and growth, things like that. But,
when I was doing that, my tank looked phenomenal. Like everything was vibrant. You had those extra corals, had the extra like shimmer vibrance of the tank.
Yeah.
Like it definitely was looking good when I was doing that system.
Yeah. Why you been slacking?
Because I had a tiny human that steals all my free time.
Okay. Yeah. And for a while now he's like mobile. Before he was just kind of.
It's easier when they're a little potato, when they run around and try and mess with stuff and mess with your tank. You constantly keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I've heard a couple horror stories of people with young kids and stuff around their tanks. Like one guy had a kid dump a whole thing of pellets right into the tank, into the sump actually, which is, I mean, at least put it in the tank, kid. And then what was another one? A guy had a little station set up. I think I had just shipped him some corals, and he had his revive and his little like dipping station set up, and his kid came and dumped the entire bottle of revive into the corals that were just sitting in tank water.
Dang. How'd that turn out?
Just melted them. Yeah, he said, I didn't get too mad at him. I love my kid, but I was pretty upset.
I came out one day and he was just like, with my filter rollers, like, it's like spilling on, like, and another time. Thankfully, I had a mesh top on there, but he had his like handful of like goldfish crackers and like tried to throw them in the tank. I was like,
I see the logic in that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like impeccable logic there.
Yeah.
But I was like, no. But thankfully the screen talk caught them all.
Yeah.
A few interesting ones.
It keeps fish in and out.
Exactly. Dual purpose.
Yeah.
Yep. Barely. I have an old Jabo return pump. Haven't cleaned 1.5 years. I cleaned it last night, put the pump back in the sump, and it wouldn't start up. Oh no.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's like, I always laugh when people don't want to turn it off, but I mean, there you go. If it's possible, it's good to have a spare.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, especially with pumps that aren't that expensive in the first place, like you might as well have a couple impellers and backup options. These are not that expensive to
or just a full spare pump, right?
Yeah.
The biggest thing is though buying the same model because the same bulkhead, the same fitting, same screw on. It's easy to swap it, and if you have two, you can just swap it when you clean it, and then your next one just goes sits on the shelf for 6 months, right? And just swap them back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of Vectra's kind of been my go-to. The M2's kind of been my go-to. But yeah, I was actually having problems with. I've seen this happen with a couple of them, and I don't know if it's as the PSU gets a little bit like older. I actually found that they would power down, and then they do the lights flickering thing, like something's wrong, whatever the warning signs.
Yeah.
And then I just turned the pump down to 90%, and it hasn't been a problem since.
Interesting.
And I think maybe there's just something with the power supply. I don't know, like I can't say exactly, but they seem to be a little bit happier at 90%. So if anybody's having that problem,
50%, so I've never seen that one.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't have. I mean, generally I would run all my return pumps always at 100%.
Really?
No question. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
what's your logic on that?
Well, my tanks are big, and I'm mostly doing SPS, and why wouldn't I want to get as much flow out of my return as possible?
I guess. My thought process is always, okay, the power heads are doing your flow. The return pump is really just for like bringing warm water from your heaters and processing the skimmer. That's my logic.
I mean, for me, the return pump is flow for the tank just as much as the return pumps are, or the flow pumps are. So
fair point.
It's a big part of it. And also, they don't take up room in the tank. They're just a nozzle in the corner, and
Fair point. My secondary reason is I mostly default make my tank super silent. And if you have crazy flow through your sump, it usually makes all the waterfall noise, or if it's slower, it doesn't. That's my other half of the logic.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how your sump is set up, depending on how the water goes through the baffles. If it's under, like, there's different ways to do them, right? So my sumps are quiet if I have filter socks in. If I take the filter socks off, then the water kind of falls in that chamber. But
okay. Yeah. Random thought question. High flow versus low flow in a sump, does it make any difference from your skimmer? Having time to process the water around it, or it just processes everything? Is there any difference in that?
I think there's all the same? I think there's probably a sweet spot, because actually slower turnover would mean that the skimmer gets a longer time to react with the water that's in that range of your system. The water that's in the sump is going to get more of a chance to get skimmed.
Yeah.
Whereas faster flow, it's just pulling that water away more quickly.
Randomly,
so
right? But does it actually make a difference? Like more dwell time, but at the end of the day, is it still pulling everything out? It's one of those stupid things I've always debated back and forth in my head.
Yeah, I mean, for that, there could be something to that. It could actually be better to, have more flow or less flow through your sump, just for things to, I don't know, react longer in that chamber. But hard to say, because you could also make the argument that the faster turnover is going to give the skimmer more of a chance to find the things that it wants to skim,
Or I guess with Chaeto and a big refugium, does contact time make a difference, or is it just the same water column and it pulls out what it pulls out?
Yeah. I mean, Chaeto would be, I'd say it would be the same kind of idea, where maybe more reaction time. Yeah, I don't know, but then it's more turnover.
I know, right? 50-50.
I don't have the answers on this one.
I don't either. I don't know if it makes any difference or if it's irrelevant, but it's one of those stupid things I do.
And that said, I do think that a tank can do awesome with super, super low flow in a return too. I think it can still works quite well. It's not necessary to go super high flow.
Okay, question for you in the chat. Actually, first, comment from Emma. Shouldn't dissolved organics naturally be distributed equally throughout? Probably. But yeah, this is why we're like, I like debating. It's like, it may make zero difference. It may make some minuscule difference. You know, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But Ahmed, how often do you run an ICP, and do you follow the recommended corrections?
Yeah, I do ICPs once a month because I have a pretty good relationship with Fauna Marine and do ICP consulting for them. So I like to get a lot of data for myself. But I do the recommended, for the most part. I do the recommended doses. However, if you go into the calculator in the if you go into your like ICP menu dashboard, there's a calculator and you can do individual element dosing. And if you want, so for example, like I think Fauna recommends your strontium, I think it's between 6 and 8. But then, for example, Moonshiners, I think says 8 to 10 is kind of the range they like. So they like strontium a little bit higher. So if you go to the individual elements doser, you can go and do the calculations it'll tell you how much strontium to dose. To get it to exactly the level you want. So, I'll pick and choose which elements I want to, kind of shoot a little bit higher on. And, some of them I think you kind of can push a little further, like nickel and zinc. I'll probably dose a little bit more than what they say if they're low. I guess those elements just get used and depleted pretty quickly. And, who knows how, by the time you got your ICP result, your level could be even lower than it was, who knows? So could be higher, but
very true. Very, very true. Yeah. If you are specifically dosing regularly dosing trace elements, either, dailies or just like on a doser things, then I think there's definitely more important to do semi-regular ICPs to make sure that your dosing's in line and you're, completely too low, or if you're overdosing it, that's another issue.
Yeah.
Trav, does Adam have any tricks for ridding vermitid snails?
Yeah, they're kind of a weird one because I have them in my system, but I just have big ones and they don't really bother me. They're not like the little ones that just go everywhere and you cut your fingers on them. For whatever reason, in some people's tanks, they just go crazy, and they're everywhere. Some people have told me after they added just a crap ton of bumblebee snails that they've seen a reduction. And even like almost got them down to, almost zero. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get them down to zero because they're going to be in the sump and in other places. But people seem to say that works. I mean, I would say there's enough people that have told me it works now that, I might have some hope for it. I also wondered about fenbendazole since it kills. It's mollusks are pretty sensitive to it, and vermitid snails are a mollusk. I was, hoping someone that had done a treatment for that would maybe say the vermitids went away, but I think you'd have to do a really, really high dose because it sounds like they don't die from it easily.
Likely. Since you just mentioned that, I just popped to my mind earlier. There's a question in the chat about hydroids, and fenbendazole would probably take them out too, I would assume.
Hydroids, you would use not fenbendazole. Oh yeah, no, fenbendazole would take out hydroids. Yeah,
I would think so.
It would. Yeah, because they're kind of in that Anthalia family, which is kind of related to Xenia and stuff like that. I think. Yeah. I'm
tempted to try it, but I also have a whole slew of like rainbow clove polyps that I would rather not kill them all because
they would die.
Pretty. I know, but I have a ton of them and they're really nice. So I'm like.
Well, you might just have to, pull as many out as you can and put them in a separate system. The thing with fenbendazole, though, is that it does stay absorbed in your rock and in your system for up to a couple years. So some people have reported, having trouble reintroducing those kinds of corals after treating for fenbendazole.
Interesting.
So,
have you tried the angelfish food that's laced with it? Those comment in the chat. I've heard
no,
a few things stream, but.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing that Ray from Pirates Reef kind of got onto. And I mean, I think if that works for people, it's probably, a safe way to treat. I mean, if we're talking about treating acropore eating flatworms, that's kind of why this all kind of became a thing.
Yeah.
But my concern with it is that it's such a low dose that, my fear is that eventually it's going to create a super flatworm that's resistant, So I would be more of a fan of doing a higher dose at a time and really nuking them. That said, I mean, it seems like my experience, it was years ago that I sort of accidentally discovered that fenbendazole kills flatworms. My experience was that it was one treatment and then the eggs never even hatched and were able to come back. So, I mean, that'd just be another, who knows if there's just like, micro amounts of it in the water column or in your surfaces that, or maybe the, I don't know, the reproduction process is hindered in some way, but either way, never came back. So, that's pretty good.
I'm tempted to try it just as like a proactive thing. Cause I have some corals that are just, they're not quite 100%. I always wonder, is there something bugging it? Like part of me wants to try it just to see if it.
I mean, if there were flatworms, you would know.
Yeah.
You would know by now.
I had some just be like, in the past, and I'm pretty sure they're all gone now. But you always wonder, right? And are they hiding in there somewhere?
Yeah. And I mean, your corals aren't like mine. You can't just pick them all up and
no, they're on the rock. There's no easy way. You're in there's a flashlight at night, and you see a couple of marks. You're like, is that a bite mark? And you're like, okay, the Ghani's like hitting that coral every day. It's probably just stinging it. But
yeah. And sometimes it's just light recession from lack of light or whatever. There's a lot of factors for sure.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got to dig in my shed somewhere. I have a bunch of like fish benzidol I bought like a bazillion years ago. That's somewhere in there. Somewhere in the archives.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see you got some. Yeah, nice.
If not, I'll bug you. You probably have some. Yep. Okay, another interesting hot topic these days about like antibiotics and stuff. Do you think they're a good tool? Are you against using them? What is your thoughts?
I mean, I think they're like a last resort. And, I think maybe there is something to treating corals separately in certain antibiotics, but I'd say I'm not against spot treating stuff, but doing a whole system is really just like is a bit of a, I don't know, a desperate thing. I mean, I did have some good results from Cipro when I had some issues with darkening acros that, seemed like, no other thing could point to that being the cause. And it did actually fix the issue. So, so I think that there are times where that's the tool you need to use, but it's definitely not, it's a last resort, if you can only do something like that when you feel like you've looked at all of the major factors and, it's not, it's going to make a good tank maybe great, but it's not going to make a bad tank great.
So did you do as a dip or a whole tank?
I did a whole tank treatment with Cipro at one point. Yeah.
Now, the other thing I always wonder too, if you like, I've used it as a dip. I haven't really went the whole tank route, but I always wonder, like, is there any detriment? Like, are you going to kill any of the good stuff in your tank to like a detrimental level, or is it, like, because obviously it doesn't discriminate. You're good bacteria, you're bad, right? It's just like.
Yeah, I think it's like there's the gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria strains, and I can't remember which one it interacts with. Have to talk to Dong about this, but it's I don't know, it's obviously going to take out some good stuff. It's good with the bad, I'm sure. Actually I'm gonna do aquabiomics. They sent me a test, so I'll have I'm gonna get Eli on my stream to talk about it once we do it.
You need a second test and then do like a tank treatment.
Before,
I was actually in my head, I was like, I should bug him about that and see if he would like work with
me.
Well,
they do that too, because they sell the kits as you can do a follow-up. So I would like to do that. I'd be curious to see what a Cipro or maybe chemiclean treatment would do to your to those populations.
But do like a pre-test and then a post-test and compare. Is it detrimental? Is it okay? The good guys are coming back. It's not a big deal. It'd be fascinating to do for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in the case of my coral issue where there were acros that were darkening, it was probably a bacterial issue, on their tissue that was sort of somewhat imbalanced. And, I mean, it's like anything. It's like if humans take antibiotics, we're kind of messing up the whole community. So, you hope that you kill more of the bad than the good, and that when the bad go away, some of the good start to proliferate and become more dominant, but hard to say.
On that note, pre-Christmas, I was sick or whatever for a week, and then I had the stupid cough that lingered for like a month and a half. And I finally got some, took some antibiotics, and 4 or 5 days later, it's completely gone. I was fine since then, but it just wouldn't go away. So finally, like, okay, I guess I'll go like talk to a doctor.
Yeah,
and then it's like it works. So I mean, corals, if there's something that's lingering,
Well, I mean, there's a lot more information about treating humans with antibiotics than there are treating corals.
Yeah. Has Adam ever gotten aptasia in his tank? I'm gonna guess yes. If so, how did he get rid of them?
Absolutely not. Yeah, of course. I mean, I have the luxury of having big enough systems to have a couple good copper bands, and I actually can. One of them is just super, super chill, and I can catch them easily and actually move them from tank to tank.
That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, aptasia are hard if you can't find a biological. Like, the best thing is to have a biological solution. So if you can get Bergia to stick, like, they can work, but they also have there's a lot of predators for them. So, they seem to get wiped out in certain people's systems pretty easily.
Yeah.
Peppermint shrimp, obviously. Yeah.
Which was great until I ran out of aptasia. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah. And the thing with those, spot treatments like the F aptasia and stuff is, they kind of kill them, but like also like there's always going to be a little trace. Like, once you have one, you probably have
20.
At least 20. Yeah.
100.
But and you might melt some of those ones that are in a certain spot, but all it takes is just like a genetic sample. It's like just a tiny little bit of the genetic little piece to recover, and they come back, and they seem to come back madder. They seem to be like, I don't know, more I don't know, resilient or multiply faster once they come back.
So my office tank was like litter and aptasia a while ago, and people were like making fun of my videos. They're like, aptasia everywhere. I was like, yeah. So I eventually went to town with aptasia, and I got most of them, but I think I can see 2 right now that have come back that I got to hit. Yeah. But yeah, so they're out there. Eventually I'll just get a bunch of Bergia and put them in there, and hopefully they'll clear them out. But
yeah, well, you brought Bergia farm is all ready to go.
Well, I need more aptasia. Actually, Buddy was telling me about this tank that he was like servicing that has like bazillions of aptasia, and I was like, perfect, I would like some. So I might try breeding them again.
Yeah, I got a local guy that he just takes some of my rocks sometimes. That I do have one sump that has aptasia on the rock, and funny enough though, I was like, I'll give you some, but my copper band's usually I put the rock in my other tank and let the copper band, and he goes right for it. He wastes zero time.
So you introduce aptasia into your tank?
Well, I
purposely.
I have taken the rock from the sump and put it in the display for a copper band to have food. Like, because I mean, he eats frozen foods too, but I mean, I think maybe if it's part of his diet, I mean, he goes right for them, So yeah, it's just variety, right? Little snacks for him.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Copper bands are probably one of my favorite fish. I gotta try one again.
Yeah. I mean, anything you can find a biological solution for, like a biological problem, it's always ideal, obviously, because it just does the job for you. But well, I mean,
case in point, I have a copper band in my water box, and there is no aptasia to be seen. But the odd time somewhere deep in a crack, I'll spot one. Right? It's somewhere you can't get to it. So
yeah, they're usually pretty good at getting this stuff. They're pretty skinny. Yeah.
Mine's pretty big though. Like, I've had them for years and years, but
yeah. And they are a hard fish to introduce. I mean, in my experience and sort of seeing other people try to introduce them, it's like, sadly, it's almost like a 1 in 4 kind of success rate.
So I personally haven't had an issue from the introduction perspective. I did lose one when I tried to do my office tank, but it was because the yellow tang basically harassed him to his demise, which was a bugger. So I'm gonna have to pull him out if I add one again, or throw him in the sump for like a month until the other one settles. But a big thing that I found, because usually people have trouble getting them eating, that's usually the hardest part.
Yeah, like they will eat aptasia, but if there isn't much in the tank, then it is hard to get them switched on to frozen foods.
Yeah, that's always the long-term goal. But manila clams has always been my go-to. Like, just go to the seafood market and get some, throw them in the freezer, and just pop one in the tank every couple days. And their little beaks, they go in it, and it's worked for every single one that I've had to get them eating.
Okay.
And eventually,
manila clams?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, just go get a bag for like $6-7 at the seafood market. They're usually on ice, and I go throw them in, throw in my freezer, and I'll throw one in the tank every couple of days. And as they start to thaw, they open up, and the copper bands just go for them.
Okay,
and that's worked for multiples for me. So that's been
I'm sure lots of the fish like mowing on something like that.
Yeah,
it's probably pretty good food. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I should actually start feeding like a little more variety of different seafoods. In the past, like I used to make like a slurry, I'd use the food I was talking about earlier, and then I'd add, even actually if you blend nori up in your mix, then it's, that's another way to put the nori in. And then the nori is all saturated with all the aminos and everything else in there too, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to do it. Could you ask him about his Radion Scoodle?
Scoodle.
What kind of scoodle do you run your radios on?
It's a golden scoodle.
Oh, perfect.
No. I guess I did make a little change to my. I have one system I'm running bolus on. This is a system that's not bolus.
Okay, question. I have to interrupt. Bolus, any difference from you? Is there merit here? Is there anything that says? Because whenever I hear this, I'm just like, that's just like, you don't have a dose or way dosing. Like, fill me in on this. Like,
yeah. So my smaller system is on bolus, and it was on balling light before. So the only change I made was essentially dosing all the alk in one dose.
Yeah.
Before the light period, and actually we call it the solus period. It's a little catchphrase for it. Is having your solus light period where your lights peak basically for the first. Well, they ramp up quickly, and then they're up to for 2 hours. They're at their top peak. So I would say that the first improvement I saw was an improvement in pH, like versus the dosing before. I probably got about a 0.1 increase in pH, which I think is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And I don't know, that tank is like the colors and the growth. It's hard to say. The growth is still better in the big system, but there's multiple factors that I think are part of that. But it seems good. I think something to really know if it's different would be just to switch to doing multiple doses a day of the same amount, and just see. Well, you would know pretty quickly if your alk goes on the incline or the decline, or your calcium goes on the incline or the decline if your growth has changed. So I may cycle back and then see, because that's the only way I would know. Because like I talked about earlier, sometimes a tank is on an upswing anyways, and you make a change and you go, oh, well, that must have done it. But it might have just been improving regardless. So, but I think the bolus is good. But back to my lighting schedule, the main system, the big SPS system, I tried the solus thing. So as opposed to having this slow ramp up in the peak, didn't really hit until about 3 or 4 hours into the day. Now it's after about an hour, it kind of hits its peak. And I think there's something to that. That's probably good for the corals, but I wouldn't say things have changed dramatically. But it's always hard for me to relate what my lighting schedule to other tanks, because I run my radions at like 100%, but I'm only running XR15s, and then I've got Orphex and Reef Brights as well. So there's a slew of lights that are all kind of making everything what it is. And maybe for the size of the tanks, the radions are actually a little underpowered. So that's kind of why I can get away with running them so high. And this is the SPS system I'm talking about.
That's fair.
But actually I can share my lighting schedule with people, but I don't think it is super applicable to the average tank, because most people won't have the same combination of lights that I have. So
that's fair. I run mine lower, but I also have, more radians I need on my tank. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah. But, well, that's a nice part of having a sponsor like Ecotech.
That helps. But so I run mine pretty low, and I actually changed mine to the narrow lenses, which made me drop them like another 30%. So they're pretty low now. But I've had corals spawn in my tank under my schedule and stuff, so I'm like, must work. Like I've been teeny tweaks, but basically the same schedule I've been running for years.
Which
has been good.
And I'm still running T5s on those systems too. I forgot to mention that. So but the T5s are only on for a couple hours a day during the solus period. Okay,
Radion Pros or Blues for you?
I've been running blues, and I'll actually say that my reasoning for the blues was because I was running T5s as well, and I feel like I wanted more of the blue spectrum. Because actually, you can see my tank in the background of this video, like that's with everything on, and that's pretty, like, I don't know, it's like a 15K, 20K kind of look or whatever. Good. It looks like a Radion color, like as far as, you know what I mean? Like it's got that Radion kind of balance. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. Something I'll say, actually, the back system, that's the bolus system, I added some AI blades to it. And that tank has XR30 blues Gen 6s, which, are quite blue. And I bought blades for it. I actually went with the grows instead of the glows. So the ones that have more white in the spectrum. Yeah. And to me, actually, that's perfect. I think if you were running Radion Pros, you might want to do the glows.
That's what I did before on my prior tank. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, it's a frag tank. So like, I just want to extend the light base. I don't want to just supplement. I want to get more, usable, spectrum for the corals. So that's why I went with the grows. And the grows, actually, I don't know why. I think maybe the diodes are more expensive for the blues. The grows are like 25% cheaper than the glows. Yeah, which is crazy, because if it's just some diodes that is a difference, then
I mean, that's the only difference, right? It's just the LEDs they use.
Yeah.
So, yep.
But I'll say the combination of the Radion Blue Gen 6s and the AI grows is freaking awesome. Nice. It looks great. Yeah. I mean, to me, they're the best light bar on the market. I love Reef Brights, but I do think that the spectrum is a little Windexy. Like, it's a little like, it's just I don't know. It's got a thing. It doesn't feel like a really wide spectrum. And I like the fact that the blades are, they're basically just like mini strips of Radions, or I guess AIs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they're okay. Devin, do you still run the A blades? Not at the moment, because they're too long for my current tank. I had like the 6-footers, and I have a 4-foot tank in here, so not at the moment. But I had XR15 Pros, and I had a glow on either side of them. If I was just going to run the blades, I would do probably a of it. If I was to do like 3 above it.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the good success for people running just blades, and you can do a combination of them and just run that all in a tank. So I mean, they're not cheap, but then again, cost wise, I guess if you actually compare them to like Radions or something, it's actually not that different.
Yeah. Well, then now I put the AI edges, which are basically like a panel of blades, essentially, like the Hydra edges, on my tank. And I've been rocking those for the last like month and a half or so on my Gani tank. I've been strategically cropping it out whenever I show my tank, because they weren't released yet. But now I don't have to. But
nice.
But they're kind of like blades in a weird way, right? Because they're kind of like that panel in a sense.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, they're great. I sadly just have this growing pile of Orphec OR3s that's just like they're where they burn out on me. They seem to be really good at lasting just outside of the warranty period.
It was highly calculated warranty period.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think it's just cheap manufacturing. But I mean, I shouldn't knock it. Spencer, who's the rep for Orphec Canada, he's offered me some, to hook me up, for some of the, I got to replace the PCB boards or whatever on them. So it's a little bit of work, but hey, I have an engineer for that, right?
There you go. I've never used Orphec, so I can't really say. I have zero personal experience with that one.
I would say if you can afford it, just go with the blades. They're just a beautiful piece of reef gear. Like, they're super nice.
And the OCD of a silent tank, it's completely passive. There's no fan, there's nothing. It's just like pure silence, which
totally
I really appreciate. Yep. But so far with the edges, I think it's very comparable to having that blend of the blades, because you have that basically all those colors in one panel. And at least like I have the lights at like 50-55%, and they're super duper quiet. I don't really notice it on. Like when I was filming the video and cranked to 100%, obviously I heard the fan, but my normal like happy range for like 150 to like 200-ish kind of throughout the tank for the Ganis. Don't even really notice them, which is cool.
Yeah, nice.
So
how are those new AIs as far as pricing wise compared to Radions and stuff? Do you know where they?
I was looking at BRSs the other day. I'll tell you in 2 seconds. So this is US, obviously, but the smaller one is $399 and the larger one is $699.
Okay, so maybe they're about 25% cheaper than Radions per unit.
Yeah,
of
and then,
equivalent size. Yeah.
Yeah, so $529 for a 15 and $1,000 for a 30.
Yeah, quite a bit cheaper then. Yeah,
$200 cheaper per.
Yeah, that's cool.
There you go.
Well, we'll be interesting to see what people are saying that have run tanks exclusively on them. But yeah, AI has always been good. It's interesting to see, the what's the group called, that Aperture buy up AI and sort of combine those products, because it's nice to see a range of stuff.
Yep, it's good to have options. I like options. Pick your poison. Okay, we do got to wrap her up fairly soon, but if we did miss any comments in the chat, re-ask them, and we'll make sure we get them.
Yeah. I mean, we can do a quick scan here or whatever if there's anything.
Yep. I have a Ghani. Ghanis are awesome. I have a Ghani obsession lately.
Yeah, I know. You're always asking me for Ghani's.
Yeah, because you might have some I don't have.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, I've been really like chill on the import front for the past 6 months, and
fair enough.
I started thinking about it, and I was like, where do my best corals come from? And I just like all the ones that I really sell and grow and have the best success with are aquacultured pieces. They're not imported mariculture or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I kind of like the idea of just kind of I wouldn't say I'm off the grid. I'm still gonna do some imported corals, but I mean, we got to get new stuff. We all want new stuff.
Well, if you do and you need filler Ghani's, let me know.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, now that you mention it, there is a Malaysia shipment coming pretty soon, so I'm gonna try some Speciosa and stuff again. But they do have Ghani's in Malaysia.
And if you need more to fill a box,
okay,
you know to talk to.
Yeah.
You got to justify that shipping. So
yep,
shipping sucks. That's one thing that I learned with importing is shipping sucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm not doing the importing myself. I'm just part of the order, but I can get more stuff. It's all good. Yeah, we'll talk. Yep.
All right. Reef breeders, edge bars. I don't have experience. I do not. I used cause there's the alley bars, which I've seen branded as 10 different things, and they're all the same thing with slightly different diodes. And for the price, they're good bang for your buck for the price. You obviously don't have as much control, and most of them you don't have all the individual channel controls. It kind of is what it is. But if you're on a budget, usually those bars are a good bang for your buck just to light a tank. And realistically, I mean, most reef lights are going to grow corals. Pretty much anything's going to grow corals. You're paying for, that controllability, the fine tune the colors, to ramp it up. A lot of those extra features is kind of what you're paying for at the end of the day. Where most things will grow corals.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, another thing I'll say about the blades is just the setup was just so easy. You can even actually use the Radeon schedule that you already have to run the blade originally, which is kind of sweet.
No, exactly. Which is fun.
Yeah.
When's the next Beyond the Reef episode coming out? Do you have what's your schedule?
So it's been I mean, I used to be doing it every second Friday or Saturday, and I kind of got a little behind, but the newest episode is recorded. So it's part 2 with Dong Zhao, talking about inputs and outputs. I think I'll probably drop it let's say maybe Sunday, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a good one for sure. We got a lot of good stuff.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Yeah, actually, some of it will, I think, elaborate a little bit on a couple of things we talked about today. So yeah.
Nice. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Emma, any recommendations for a skimmer? I have a Red Sea RK300 and I can't stand it. If I was to try another skimmer, I would probably try the Max Spec one with the dual pumps. I've heard it works really well and it's supposed to be pretty dang quiet. I almost went for that one personally, but then I went Bubble King just because my OCD wanted the quietest one out there. But that was a close second. So that's honestly what I'd probably try if I was going to try a different one for fun.
I would say my favorite skimmers for the price are the Reef Octopus Elite series, and they're pretty nice and quiet, and the pumps are great on them. And with those, what are the Reef Octopus pumps called? The what's their brand called?
Not Red Dragon. They're Speedy. Something speed. No, they're not.
Anyways, they're just so easy to take apart. They don't actually have any screws or anything. You just turn it and twist it apart.
Nice.
So they're really nice to maintain.
Varios.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Varios. Yeah, the Varios are sweet. Yeah, I think
that was also a contender. That was in the top 3 between the 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Max Spec makes good stuff. I think they're kind of like an underappreciated company. They're probably their best contribution to the hobby is probably their gyres, but they've done, I saw some people that had awesome tanks with the Max Spec Razor as a light. I saw a guy grow.
It was a decent light.
Yeah. I saw a guy grow massive colonies of homewrecker under it. So
that's what I mean. Most things will grow most things. But when I was changing my skimmer, I was chatting with BRS Ryan. I was like, so what's quieter? I'm like, I know you've used them all because I've watched your videos. And I was like, which one of these two would you go with? And he's like, but like, which one's the quietest? And then he's like, oh, it's the Level King's quieter. I'm like, okay. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a factor. I mean, it's a factor that doesn't matter as much for me because my tanks are all in, in the garage, so they can be noisy and it's fine. I just want it to work well.
Mine is 6 feet away from me, the microphone, so quiet's better.
For sure.
Yep. All right, guys.
Yeah. Okay, I hear someone knocking, so it's probably time.
It's over that time. But yeah, so as always, you guys enjoyed it. Hit that like button. You do subscribe. Make sure you look out for that Beyond the Reef podcast episode on Sunday, and we will see you guys next stream. Next week. All right,
thanks for having me, Devin.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining me. Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Next week, probably no stream because I don't think I'll have time to record one, but I will see you guys once I'm back from my trip. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.